the parameter v is being used to drive whether we transition from idle to walk and back again, and that seems to be working. So let's put it all together and tie that back into the script so that those the numbers for that v parameter can come from what's actually happening from the user, and then we'll have our guy animating nicely. So to do that, we're going to go back to our hero game object where our translation and rotation controls are, and we're going to extend this script a little bit further. Double click on it, open up your favorite text editor. Mine is Mono, yours might be Visual Studio. And we'll go back to hero control up. This is where the rotation and the translation occurs. We are rotating and moving the root object of the mesh, and so remember we call that in-place animation rather than root motion. The animation, the walk animation of our character won't actually move its position in the game at this point. We'll add a little bit more. We'll now add animate the skinned mesh for the knight hero based on user input, right? If we're going to animate it, if we want to talk to those parameters, what do we need a reference to in the script in order to push data to it? What's the component that we actually want to set the parameters on? Or what's the component where we can get that v parameter and that h parameter that we made? Where does this live? In the animation controller, right? Which is a child asset of the animator. So we're going to need a reference to the animator. We've got an animator that's a child asset of us. Okay? So remember we can do this by saying private animator anim. So this is our animator component with the anim controller for the hero. But how to set this reference? We are going to choose not to drag and drop the reference. We're going to look for a better way. How can we connect this to the animator? We're going to use some form of get component. And we're going to do it in our onEnable method because onEnable happens before start, and it's a more convenient place to do this, generally speaking. We're going to say, we know there's an animator somewhere in our hierarchy. We need to probe inside our hierarchy and get it. And then once we have it, no matter where it is, the first reference is going to be the one we're going to set them on. And we do this by saying this.gameObject.get component in children. There's actually two versions of this. There's get component in children and get components in children. We're going to assume that there's only one animator child asset. We're going to assume there's only one skin mesh renderer doing stuff. That we're not bound by that. We might have, like, you know, who knows, like a parrot sitting on his shoulder eventually, like a pet animating that we want to talk to directly. And if that's the case, we'll have to revisit this code, but be working iteratively, we're going to assume there's one. And so we're going to say get component in children. And the type of component we're going to get is animator, right? That should set that up. If we're going to talk to our animator, what do we assume? Or what do we always have to check and not assume? If it's not null, because we never want to dereference a null reference. We might not have an animator, and if that's true, we don't want our code to break. We want to be fault tolerant. So if the animator is not null, pass access data to the animator to drive the params. How do we do that? Animator dot. There's a way to set data inside an animator. There's in the API. Depending on the data type. And because there's 4 different data types for parameters, there's a bunch of different functions. We know that our parameter v is a float, so we're going to use float. And there's 4 forms. We can identify it by name, by ID, and there's actually something new in the engine now where you can nicely filter. You can apply basically a filter function to the values that you set. You can give it a damp time and a delta time, so you can, instead of setting a number directly, you can give it a little bit of a massage. If you find your animator moves a little bit too glitchy, these functions were added for that. We're not going to care about that for now. We're going to set the values directly. We're going to say get float. We're going to say set float. What's the name of our float? V, and we're going to pass it inputs dot x. Is that right? Very good. And let's set h while we're here. It's not connected yet in the animator, but we know we're going to. So let's do that. And if we run our game, and we're going to move our camera down a little bit. We'll set our distance to 10. Set our height to 4. Trying to make the ground a little bit smaller just so I can see the motion happening a little bit better. There we go. With any luck, hey look, we're actually walking. Turning. And walking again. Transitioning back to idle. We don't have a walk backwards connected yet. We only have pushing forward on the analog stick, so he idles when you're walking backwards, but the walking forward is fine. I noticed that has exit time is checked on the transition back. I want to make sure that's off so that the transition from idle to walk is always very responsive, like that. And that's how we connect parameters to script. Animator.setFloat.